Hi and welcome to my review of the Artillery 3D Sidewinder SW-X1. Now before we go any further with this review, I'd like to point out this machine was sent to me free of charge by Artillery 3D. I have been sent it for a review and to give them general feedback about the machine, which I have already done, as the machine that you are looking at here is one of their earliest models. I believe they are now on revision 3, which has had many slight alterations and upgrades to improve the machine from the standard, but this is my review of this machine, the one I was sent, not of any other machines out there or nothing that you read on social media or in any forums. This is a review of this machine and this machine alone. So without any further ado, let's get started. So let's have a little look around the machine. The front here, you've got an LCD touch display, very crisp, very clear, very easy to use, very simple menus. On the top here you have flash drive and a micro SD card slot. On the side here we have a fan which blows the cold air across the main board and out of the side. Turn it round to the side and right the way around to the rear, without knocking all the lighting down. As you can see, it's dual lead screw. It's also got a belt across the top that connects the two lead screws together. This helps to keep this carriage level so you don't get any issues with one side being higher or lower than the other. As you can see, or possibly can't, the end stops are all optical, which is great, not having physical end stops, although there are sometimes downsides to that. The bed is a glass bed. It has got a heat pad underneath it, which is mains voltage, so make sure whichever country you're in you get the correct voltage for you, should it be 240 or 110. Underneath that they have some insulation that helps to keep the heat in. This heat bed heats up in seconds. I mean seconds. We can get to 70-80 degrees inside a minute. So wait time on this printer is absolutely minimal. As you can see, the extrusions, good solid extrusions, 20 by 40s on this part of the frame, 20 by 60 for this carriage and for that carriage, and underneath as well, very solidly built, nice solid frame. Another nice thing about this printer is the use of ribbon cables. This means that you don't have nasty cables all over the place getting snarled up. Everything's done via ribbon cable with little breakout boards. There's a small breakout board there. There's a small breakout board under this cover here. So it's just a nice design, works particularly well. Had no issues with mine whatsoever. Fans aren't particularly noisy, stepper motors aren't particularly noisy. That motor is a little noisy, but we'll cross that bridge. Hot end direct drive. It's a E3D Volcano copy or style hot end. Works very well. You have to be careful with your temperatures with your filaments because of that, because it does heat up quite a lot. It is quite a vicious thing. Spool holder, not everybody's cup of tea. I'm quite happy with it. I have limited space at the moment, so having something that isn't stuck out the side is good for me. It works on bearings. There is a filament run out sensor here as well, which I've got a piece of filament stuck in because I don't tend to use them, but it does work. It's got power off recovery, which I've checked. It's got thermal runaway set up in it. It's a good solid machine. So without further ado, let's look at some of the things I've managed to print on it. Now, in my unboxing video that I did, that I'll post a link to up here somewhere, I had a good look around the machine, took the bottom off, looked at the control board, the wiring, that kind of thing. So I'm not going to cover that in this video. This video is just on the time I've had with it in the last couple of months, the printing of one thing or another. So the first thing is that when you are an early adopter of a new printer, you get one of the first ones out in the market, there are going to be teething troubles. I only had one problem with this when it arrived. I had an issue with the sensor here for the carriage. Unfortunately, it wasn't working. Now, I didn't want to not be able to print with the machine, so what I did was I set up a little standard microswitch end stop which I screwed with a T-nut into there and plugged in to use that as my end stop for the axis, so I was able to continue printing. So a few of my first prints were done with that while I waited for Artillery 3D to send me the replacement sensor. Now unfortunately the timing of this wasn't brilliant, as it was just before the beginning of the Chinese New Year. So I received the printer in good time, came direct from AliExpress. I didn't get it sent direct from Artillery 3D, it came through AliExpress, it came through the usual way of buying it, so I know it wasn't a cherry-picked machine. In fact, the fact it had a broken sensor told me it wasn't a cherry-picked machine. I emailed them, I spoke to them through chat, very quick to respond, very helpful was Tracy. She said, I'll send you one out, but it is the Chinese New Year, so it will be delayed. It took about 4 weeks to get to me. Not her problem, it's all down to the fact that, as you can imagine, so many parcels coming out of China, even though it was ordered very quickly, there is a backlog of getting things shipped after the New Year, so it took a while to arrive. But I managed to get some prints off the printer while I was using this homemade little microswitch. And I'd like to show you those now. Now for all the prints I'm going to show you, I'm going to leave you links to the STL files and all the filaments I used in the description, so you'll be able to follow those up. I'll also leave links to where you can buy this. A couple of those will be affiliate links, which gives me a little bit of money, which helps me to produce these videos and these reviews for you. So the first thing I printed was their calibration cube. Turned out beautifully well, no issues with it at all. I was very pleased. Some people were reporting getting issues with layer lines, not a problem I had. So that printed very well, nice print, very straightforward. I'll do some close-up shots of these which I'll put at the end of the video so you can see closer up the quality of the print. From there on I wanted to print a vase, so I picked a Brit Hawk vase. Like I say, links will be in the description. Printed absolutely beautifully. Did have a little bit of trouble with adhesion. I'm not sure whether it's an issue with the bed, but a little bit of magic glue on the bed. Never had any trouble with adhesion after that. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I like to err on the side of caution, which is why the bed is so mucky now, because it's got magic glue all over it. But just wanted to make sure it printed well. It printed like a boss. If you followed me on Twitter, you will notice that there was a human error in this. When I sliced this in Simplify 3D, I forgot to delete the top layers. So I had 4 top layers as well, which meant it was sealed. So I had to very carefully get a knife in and cut around that layer there to get the finished vase. But really nice, really good quality. No issues anywhere with gaps or anything. Just a beautiful, beautiful print. Like I say, stuck some photos up on Twitter to show that, but I'll bang a couple of photos at the end of this video to show you those as well. So after I printed the vase and I was happy with that, I decided that vase mode is fairly easy to get a good print. You don't have to have a specifically brilliant machine for that. What I'm saying is it's easy to get a good quality print. So I thought I would try something a little more solid. Well, had a look about on My Mini Factory and found this print, which is printed in, I think it's Prussiament. In fact, I'm sure it's Prussiament, but like I say, I'll leave all the materials that I've printed with, a link to them all in the description. But that turned out beautifully well. As you'll see on the close-up videos, there's no issue with layer lines. It's got a really smooth, silky finish. I was very impressed with it. No problems with overhangs or anything. In fact, I seem to remember I printed this without supports at all. There is a little bit of looping under the arm here, but only a very small amount. So again, very pleased indeed. So from there I thought, well, while I've got that filament in, I wanted to try something that maybe used a bit more of the height of the printer, because although you can print many models of sort of 3 or 4 inches and then be perfect, it's when you get to the top of a print and you've got the whole of the bed moving backwards and forwards, that's where you can get inconsistencies and issues, because if you've got this tall print moving backwards and forwards, you can get wobble on your print, which causes problems. So again, had a look round. I believe this was my mini factory as well, and I found this version of the Silver Surfer, who comes with this surfboard. Now the Silver Surfer turned out beautifully. Again, no issues with the print whatsoever. Some people had reported issues with the fingers not printing very well. I too had that problem, but clearly that's something more to do with the model rather than the actual printer itself, because everybody had issues. In fact, looking at the photographs that were available on my mini factory, mine turned out better than most. But the interesting thing about this was the surfboard. It's a long board and it prints vertically like that on the bed. Now, being the man that I am, I had a small foot on it to print it from, and I had supports up the sides like that to about that point, and then from that point on I left the printer to print it. Now this was great until we got up to about the last 10mm. At this point, of course, with no supports, it started to do this. I'll do it that way. So as the bed's moving backwards and forwards, it's wobbling because it's not held on by a lot at the bottom. Couldn't really do a lot about it. Talked to Chris Nerys after the event, or actually during the event, because I tweeted it, and he suggested hot glue and a toothpick or a wooden skewer or something like that, that you would hot glue to the bed and then hot glue to the front, which would give it more stability. Very good idea, but I, being me, continue to let it try and print. It succeeded. There is a little bit of an issue at the top because there was so much movement, not while printing, but between the movement from one point to another when it's not printing. Of course, it goes a lot quicker, and it was causing the wobble, but it finished. It completed the print. It didn't fail. I was very pleased. This now lives in my daughter's bedroom, along with most of these prints, because I'm so pleased with how they've turned out that she wants to hang on to them, which is brilliant. So from there, I've done something tall, I've done something shiny. Let's do something a bit different. This is a model by Fab365. This prints in one piece. So it prints flat on the bed, and then you fold it up and you turn it into this. It's a bit like a Discovery, which is, it's actually more like a Mercedes G-Wagon, but it looked a bit Discovery-ish, which is why I wanted to do it. Printed without any issues. Wheels turn, the rear wheel carrier opens and closes like it should. The issue I had with this print was I misread the description on the Fab365 website, and I printed it with a raft. And the problem with that was it printed so well onto the raft that I couldn't part it. So I had to reprint it without a raft to make sure that it would clip together. Oh, the bonnet also lifts up as well, I forgot to mention that, to show the engine. So it all works, it all prints in one piece, everything works, everything turns round. It went together very well. Again, very pleased with that print. You know, just to check how it worked with tolerances, I was very pleased with that. Next thing I thought to myself, right, I've done a load of printing with PLA. Let's see, because it's a direct drive device, let's see if it will actually deal with flexible filaments. So I found an old roll of this flexible sort of purple filament and printed that. It printed no problem at all, like that, absolutely fine. But because it was a fairly old roll, I have had some issues, which you'll see in the photographs of the close-ups. It's not perfect, it's a bit rough, it's possibly got a bit of moisture in it. And although it printed very well with absolute minimal stringing, there was a tiny weeny bit with the gap-mounted spanner. As you know, that's a spanner hands. But printed beautifully well. I printed one in grey, normal PLA as well, just so you can see them side by side. The quality is fantastic. But there was, like I said, this slight issue with the PETG that I used, but no issues with printing it, no issues with jams or anything, worked perfectly well. So well, in fact, I decided to print a little key ring of Thingiverse for my wife's keys. Printed beautifully. That's one of the customizable ones, so you just put the letters in, set the spacing up. and that printed in the black really well. I believe that's an E-Sun flexible filament. Prints beautifully, no problem with it at all. Nice finish, nice quality. So from there, that was all using basically that was a simplified 3D profile that was set up originally, I believe, for it was for my CR10, and I altered it and tweaked it a little. Understanding about retraction on a direct drive has to be so much smaller than on a Bowden, so I turned all that down. Then, very kindly, Artillery 3D sent me a couple of S3D files for benches, and what I did was I load those into S3D and actually pulled the FFF information from those files, so I was be able to print using the settings that they'd set. And they had two settings. They had a 0.18 and I believe the other one was a 0.8. I will double check that and put that also in the box below. So I got it all set up with that, and I thought, right, let's try something now. So I printed that model of Black Widow. Now this was printed at 0.8mm layer height with the settings that came from the bench sheet, that I ripped from the bench sheet. The only issue I had was when I removed the supports, I also removed the barrel of the pistol. So that's a bit of super glue on there, stuck that back on. But again, really good quality print. Really good quality print. As you can see, first layer goes down beautifully. This machine may not have auto bed leveling, but I'll be honest with you, I have leveled this machine twice since I got it. Once because I got a clog, which was my own stupid fault, but I had to take the nozzle off to clean it, which meant then when I repositioned the nozzle, I thought I'll re-level the bed just to make sure, but I have only done it twice. So it does hold its level incredibly well. The only other couple of things to show you print wise, the man himself, that's printed at 200%. That is a beautiful print. Really pleased with that. It's come out incredibly well. A little bit of a crotch issue, but I believe most of them do get that little bit of a crotch issue. I'm not saying it's anything to do with Joe. I'm sure his crotch is fine. And then the final thing I want to show you today, I've done lots of prints, got lots of very good quality prints out of it, incredibly happy with the machine. Like I say, I've done the surfboard, but I wanted to do something that showed off the print at full height, using the whole of the height of the print, because this is the reason why you buy these large area printers, is to print large items. So another Brithawk's vase, and I think that turned out incredibly well. I am so pleased with that. I think it's 4 bottom layers. I can't remember the speed I printed it at, but it was fairly quick because this machine will handle the speed fairly well. But it's turned out beautifully. I mean, the wife uses it. I've had to steal it back off her and take the flowers out of it to do this video because it does get used. Nice clear PLA. Again, I believe that was an E-Sun PLA, but I'll check and I'll stick it in the description. If when you watch this video I haven't stuck it in the description, write me a comment, I'll make sure to add it. So the machine, personally, apart from the issue I had with the sensor, bearing in mind they actually sent me 2 back and some more tape to restick on here, because what I actually had to do was I had to move this breakout board back slightly to put my hooky little sensor in. So they sent me some more tape to retape that. They sent me 2 sensors to be on the safe side that they worked. And since then I've had no problems at all. As you can see, I have my spool holder on backwards. I prefer it that way. Some people don't like the spool holder at all and use separate ones. The filament run out sensor, it works, but I'll be honest with you, I don't need it. I tend not to be in a situation, or try not to be in a situation where I'm going to run out of filament. It does work, but I don't use it. So what I do, I have a little bit of filament that I sit it. In fact, I'll put it in the right end, it will go in, won't it? Put it in the wrong end. I mean, it will work this way around. I have had it working. but I just put a little bit of filament in there so it senses that it's there. Like I say, I've never run out of filament, so that's not an issue. The noisiest, this machine is incredibly quiet, remarkably so. The only thing that comes close is my Prusa i3 Mark III. It is a little quieter, or it was. The only issue was this fan here. This fan sucks the air across the board and blows it out, so it's an outward blowing fan, and it was noisy. I managed to quieten mine down a little by swapping it out for another fan that I had in my spares. I believe they've now changed the fan and they've replaced the position of it, but I'll speak about that in a moment. This is this machine. As you can see, it is one of the earliest machines. It's got no writing on the front of it, it doesn't say artillery anywhere. Apart from that, it printed like a boss. I had no problem with jams, apart from one jam which was my fault. I set a temperature too low for the filament I was using, and then I panicked and I turned the temperature up too high, and then I think I probably got heat creep, and so one thing and another, it became a problem. But it printed like a boss. I had a little bit of an issue with the print bed, making sure stuff sticks. So like I say, a bit of magic glue on there, solve that problem. I can happily set this going printing, leave it printing overnight, come back to it the next day, and my prints are done. I did that with the vase. I've done it with most of the stuff. The issue I have is that during the day I'm busy. So by the time I finish work, had some family time, it's getting late into the evening. So what I did with this machine was, I sliced something in S3D, made sure I had plenty of filament, set it going, watched the first 10 or 12 layers go down, and then leave it. I would come back the next morning, lo and behold, there would be a print. I mean, the smaller ones I hung about for because I happened to be in the room at the time, but a majority of the larger, longer prints, I just left it to get on with it, and it's safe to do so. It has thermal runaway protection active on this machine. I know this because one morning I went in, early one morning, into my shed to start a print going, and it was -2, I believe. You know, it was -8 outside, and it was +2 degrees in my shed, and it wouldn't print. Because it was a minus figure, the ambient temperature was too low, and it shut down. So I thought, that must be thermal runaway protection. So I then, at a later date, I took the thermistor out of the heat block, asked it to heat the hot end. It started to heat, it realised it wasn't getting a reading from the thermistor, and it shut down. The one thing I need to point out, when you do that, you can click back on the screen and get back to the beginning, but unless you physically switch the machine off and switch it back on again, it won't print. It locks the machine out. You'll be able to press all the buttons and try and start a print, but it won't do anything until you reset the machine. It's got to be hard reset. So thermal runaway protection, fantastic, worked a treat. Filament out sensor, although it's not in the best of positions, works a treat. It would be nicer if it was up somewhere up over the print head, because the longer the distance it travels, you know, away from the print head, the better. If it runs out there, that might have been enough to finish the print, if you see what I'm saying. So if we actually have the detector very near to where it goes into the extruder gear, you might, you know, it gives you more chance of getting the print printed. It does waste an awful lot of filament, or it will do over time. Build quality when it came was fine. As usual, you have to check the eccentric nuts to make sure that they're tight. You have to make sure that the carriage is level. The only thing I had to tighten, now I've got to check this in my head, yeah, it was the bed. The bed was a little wobbly, took a bit of tightening up. When I did tighten it up, I did notice a flat spot on one of the wheels. They do supply you with spares, like again, like I said, if you check my unboxing video, you'll see the spares pack that you get with it. There are some spare wheels in there, so I could have replaced it, but I did a couple of movements on the bed, and clearly it started to get better, and then it's gone away entirely now. There is no There's nothing, no effort on there at all. Again, because it was an early model, this belt was incorrectly mounted. It was mounted smooth surface to smooth surface, so under time the tension would loosen. It was just a matter of cutting the two little cable ties, putting the belt on the other way so it interlocks teeth to teeth, which means then you can tighten it up at the end here. Fine, never slipped again. Like I say, I've levelled the bed twice, and that's about the size of it. I love the fact you can print from memory stick or SD card. I've not printed from SD card yet. I constantly print from the memory stick. Works fantastically. No problems, no issues with it at all. I did worry a little that maybe I would knock it out while I was messing about with the printer. It's not happened yet. So I'm really pleased with it. I mean, I've printed and printed and printed with this. I've had one failed print due to temperature issues, and one failed print which was the original version of Joe here, which actually gave him some nice hair. Again, that was an issue with me. What I'd actually done was, when I'd stored the filament, it had got crossed over here. I'm sure we've all done this. And it printed perfectly up till that point when it tightened on the reel, which caused it to skip a step, I imagine, or a layer, and then it managed to pull itself free. But because it missed that layer, it didn't print properly. It started to print everywhere, and like I say, Joe got some hair. A few things I would change. The wheels for levelling the bed are a little on the small side. Somebody has created a print to make larger wheels that fit, but I believe in the newer machines they now have larger wheels anyway, so that problem is negated. Strain relief. This is, again, somebody has now printed a strain relief bracket that you can fit to this. I'll leave a link in the description. I haven't printed it yet because I wanted to show you the stock machine, but I will be printing it and I will be fitting it. Basically, because it's a silicone heat pad, the cables come straight out of the rubberized pad, and it's a little flexible. There is the chance that it could over time wear thin and snap and cause an issue, and when you're playing with mains voltage, which the heat bed is on these, it's better that you have some strain relief. I don't know whether they've done anything with that on the latest models, but we will see. The glass bed has also altered. Like I say, I had some trouble with adhesion. I believe in the latest version, it's either the Mark III or the Mark IV, I don't know. They've put some sort of pattern on it, whether it's more like the G-Tech sort of style, which helps with the adhesion, so I believe. And really, apart from that, I haven't got any issues. Like I say, a little bit of problem with the adhesion level, the problem with the sensor, which they sorted for me, and really just some strain relief on that rear cable. I haven't got a problem with the spool holder. I'm quite happy to sort of slide it in and out and move it. It gives me more real estate on my desk if the spool holder's up there. I suppose I could wall mount one, but that works particularly well for me. It's an absolute bomb-proof machine. The build quality is brilliant, as you can see by the 60 by 20 rails on this carriage, 60 by 20 on that carriage, 40 by 20s on those two. Just it's so well designed. All these anodized blue metal fittings, really nice. Would I buy one? Well, I'll let you into a little secret. I am buying another one. When this video goes out, there will be a special offer on their latest machines. And I am going to purchase another one because it is such a good machine, and I want to be able to see the differences between the original machine that I got, which, like I say, is probably one of the first, and the latest machines and the alterations they've made, so I can let you know the differences that are involved. I have seen some people, like I say, I've seen people have issues, but the company do try to sort those problems out. There are going to always be teething problems. But I'll tell you something, for a first generation machine from this company, it's a cracking machine. I really have no problems with it at all. Some people were worried about the fact that it was belt driven, dual belt driven, the one thing and another. Some people moaned about the fact that the carriage was loose or these wheels were loose. Well, quite frankly, if you don't check every nut and bolt on the machine when you build it, really you're letting yourself in for trouble. The whole reasoning behind keeping these loose is the fact that you don't get flat spots on them. Because if they're in a warehouse for 2 months before they ship to you and they're all under full tension and they're not moving, you will get flat spots on the rollers, and then you will moan that you've got issues with your prints because you've got flat spots on your rollers. So these carriages and all these wheels are kept loose for that reason, and that's why you have these eccentric nuts. Simple enough, put a spanner on, tighten them up. Don't over tighten them, but tighten them up so you know you've got the grip, the wheels don't spin of their own accord, so you know you're about there. Nerys has done many a good video on how to make sure that your carriage is level and that your wheels are of the right tightness and that your bed's level and that's smooth. But really, I don't see it as a complaint. Conclusion. Would I recommend this machine to a friend or somebody who I know or asks me on Twitter? If you're looking for a large format, 300 by 300 by 400 or thereabouts, 3D printer with a direct drive extruder, mains heated bed, touchscreen, quiet stepper motors, quiet stepper motor drivers, filament runout sensor, my answer would be a resounding yes. I've had nothing but joy with this machine since the day I got it. It prints like a boss, it's bomb proof, its design, everything about it just reeks quality. If you look on Twitter, if you look at Filament Frenzy, he's been doing a lot of work with he's been printing some absolutely gorgeous prints. The quality of print that can come off this, I mean, you've seen what I've done, but the quality of the stuff that he's printing is as good as Prusa. It really is. It is fantastic. But look at the build volume. Look at the stuff you can print on this. 320 by 320 by 400. They're moving a few things about. I believe they're moving the fan to underneath the machine, so it blows the air out underneath, thus cutting down on the noise. They're also changing the fan that's in it, so it's a quieter fan. They're doing 3 or 4 upgrades with the bed, one thing and another to improve it. They're doing a slight different setup on the lead screws as well to deal with some of the issues that some people have had with layer lines. Not that I've had any of those issues, but again, they've listened to people, they've made alterations. This is why there's so many different models out there. It's because they've worked very quickly to solve issues that people have had and get the product out with these improvements done. And that's it. Thank you very much for watching. If you like what you've seen here, you can support me via Patreon, through Streamlabs or via PayPal. If you want to look at some of the other things I've done, you can check out my other videos on my website. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the like button and the little bell button at the side of the subscribe button so you know when I put more content out. I have a lot more to come in the future. I have a Ender 3 Pro to unbox, which has kindly been sent to me by Banggood. I have another machine, a Delta, coming to me from Banggood in the future to look at. I've got some filaments by SW-X1 to look at, both the rainbow, and I have a silk gold filament which I'll do a short review of. Again, thank you so much for watching, take care, and I'll see you next time.